Okay, you ready? Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Today, our guest is Eric Quill, the head coach of North Texas SC, the new USL League One team from FC Dallas. Welcome to the podcast, Eric.
Thanks, Buzz. Thanks for having me.
All right, before we talk about North Texas FC, let's talk about you a little bit, okay? Mm-hmm. You played 9 seasons in Major League Soccer, mostly for Tampa Bay Mutiny and Kansas City Wizards. But you had a stint with the Burn and a stint with the Metro Stars. You played 143 regular season games with 12 goals and 31 assists, mostly as a wing, wide, mid, or forward. But before you did all that, according to my research, you had an offer to play with Ajax of Amsterdam. So how did that come about, and why did you choose to go through the college route at Clemson instead?
Well, to clarify, it wasn't a contract offer. It was so when I was 16, I went over to France as a guest player with a team from California, and we played in a tournament. If my memory serves me correct, it was like something De Corby, but it had, Ajax was a team in it. Leeds United, a bunch of teams from all around Europe played in the tournament. We were the lone American team, and at age 16, I was the player of the tournament. And so Ajax came to the coach of the California team and asked me about me. They tracked down my parents and said they'd love for me to come to Ajax and on trial sort of for their youth program, a lot like what Johnny O'Brien did, who actually went there and stuck. And so it's just that my parents weren't really familiar with the game and the structure of the game and where my talent level was going to take me. And they were from the Midwest, from Minnesota and Illinois, and they're baseball, basketball type parents and wanted me close to home. So I think it kind of scared them, and so they shot it down pretty quickly. So came back and did the American route.
Why Clemson?
My club coach growing up was a Clemson grad, played at Clemson, so I always had that school in my head as a kid growing up as a top school. And then, as offers started to come through, Indiana, North Carolina, Clemson, I basically went on, back then you took your official visits and you made your decision off your 5 visits. A lot changed, obviously very different these days.
Yeah.
So going to Clemson and visiting and seeing their soccer stadium, which was for me the best in the country, or at least from what I visited and saw and researched. Coach was Trevor Adair, so Trevor Adair was the assistant with the U20s, and that's how he and I got connected, and we had a great relationship with the 20s, and I felt comfortable with them, and I felt comfortable with the school, and so I felt. It came down to them and UNC, and I just felt more comfortable with a lot more of the facets of Clemson offered.
This is all in the days before MLS even existed, really. So was it hard to picture for your family and for yourself even that professional soccer was a viable career at that point in time?
Yeah, no, I think if you were to ask my parents to guess what my favorite sport was, even my senior year, they would have probably guessed basketball 1, soccer 2, baseball 3. I was recruited for all 3. So I think they thought that I was going the basketball route. I think their minds were made up, and so when I got called into the 20s is when things changed. So and that was my senior year of high school. And so, again, it just took a whirlwind effect, and my parents at some point realized that my passion was taking me through soccer, and I felt the longevity of me being able to play at a high level in a professional soccer. My profile was more of a soccer player than it was a long-term baskall player.
Yeah, not being 6'7".
Correct.
Yeah.
And not, to be honest, I wasn't that great of a shooter. I was a streaky shooter. I wasn't a consistent shooter, so I saw my limitations.
Well, this just shows athletes are athletes, though. If you were being recruited at all to play basketball, and soccer and everything else, So you signed after, if I understand it correctly, 1 year at Clemson. You signed in the Nike Project 40 program, which is the forerunner for Generation Adidas. What was it about that opportunity or that moment and coming out even after your freshman year? What made you decide to forego the rest of your college and take that offer?
Number one was I was ready to play every day of my life. I was not getting tired of the game in the least. I wanted to the ball was what I was infatuated with it, and I felt like college wasn't going to allow me to sort of develop as fast as I wanted to and get that everyday environment. There's a lot of rules and regulations in NCAA as to how much you can train, and I just didn't want that. I knew that how much I wanted to be a part of the everyday environment, and you know, they came to the U20s and basically scouted us for these Project 40 contracts, and it just was for me it was the right time and the right age, and they had a good vision as for what, you know, our progress and our pathway was going to look like, and so I bought in and told my parents. I said I'll go back at some point, get my degree, which I did later on, and so.
In the early days of MLS, a lot of people probably don't know that players were allocated to teams. They were assigned to teams, and you were actually allocated as essentially coming out of your freshman year of college. Was that an extra pressure on you, having this branded allocation on your shoulders?
I think I was maybe too young and naive to realize what allocation meant, and well, I was of the mindset, show me where I need to live and where, you know, I'm ready to get going, no matter where it was.
So playing for the Mutiny, I have to ask you, what was it like being around Carlos Valderrama, playing with him?
It was amazing. I mean, you sort of take it for granted. You don't realize how good a guy was until now you're at this age, and you still see the game in the modern day, and you see the qualities that man possessed. And he was one of a kind. I don't think you'll see a one like him. I don't think you have. I mean, I think maybe some people have certain characteristics that you could assimilate, but overall, he was the best. I mean, he just controlled the tempo of every game, every practice. If you were ever up in a game, all you did was find him. I mean, he was literally he was the focal point. You know?
All of that from the center circle too.
Yeah, I mean,
is that when you first crossed paths with Marco Ferruzzi? Were you there at the same time as him? Was he a teammate of yours?
We were. Marco was a great guy for me, because as a young kid coming in. Being very young compared to those days, those rosters were a lot older than they were today.
Yeah.
Majority of your starting lineups were in their 30s and late 20s. So there was a pretty big age gap from me to other players, and so Marco was one of those players that sort of took me under his wing and treated me right and showed me the ropes, and so I was appreciative of that. And Marco, he doesn't change today. He's still a fantastic person.
You're the only person I know of that was at a club that was contracted, or at least when that process was happening. What was it like as a player in that era when Tampa Bay and Miami were, I mean, you weren't in Miami, you were at Tampa, but what was it like being sort of under that umbrella when you were there as a player?
It was weird. I mean, you kind of felt, it makes you uneasy as to where the league's going when you hear contraction, and where am I going to have a job after this? Are people going to want me, and kind of deal. And so I realized why it had to happen, but it was definitely an uneasy time, and you're wondering about how much the league can survive when you're going through those situations. So I think you just learn you don't take any day for granted. You want to just enjoy what you do and play to the fullest at every second you get.
So after the contraction, you were selected by Kansas City, the Wizards at the time, and then you had a few injuries, and then you had a pretty solid 2003, and then you were traded to the Dallas Burn for the 2004 season. So you missed South Lake, but got to enjoy the Cotton Bowl and the return to the Cotton Bowl under Colin Clark as they tried to rebuild that program from the South Lake debacle. What was it like playing for Clark? What was he like as a coach?
He was a good man manager. I mean, and obviously he's World Cup vet, and he had a lot of knowledge of the game. So I felt like between his tactical content and what he brought and his personal he was, I enjoyed playing for Colin. I thought he had a really good way about him with the players, and unfortunately I ran into the injury bug and as we all players know that consistency in the training room and not on the field wears on you psychologically. So it was unfortunate that it started to go that downward spike that second year here in Dallas.
Yeah. So after 2005, you basically ended your career. Was the injuries a big factor in that at the time?
Yeah. I was battling chronic calf and hamstring tears and strains, and I couldn't get out of the training room for any long period of time, and so I felt like it was one of those deals where. And the league it was in a transition phase of getting younger kids and younger faces in the locker room, and you kind of saw the writing on the wall. And for me, it was one of those deals where I came to a realization that moving on was the time, and I was only 27, 28. So in a lot of people's minds, and even my own mind, it was early. I could have maybe if you played the what if game, I had 3 or 4 more years if I just get myself.
If you could have stayed healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were a player that was a lot of your assets had to do with your athleticism and your pace, getting behind, that kind of thing. So I can imagine that the hamstrings and calves was a big. I mean, and you guys didn't quite have the training staffs and medicals and recovery guys that the teams have now. It's a really different world, isn't it?
No, science has changed. I mean, what I see today is these guys are well taken care of and monitored, and I think the staff did the best they could, but it was the old, you ran on the eye test. Do you look tired? Okay, but a lot of we didn't wear heart rate monitors and
GPS trackers. Yeah.
And so you can see why the injuries have cut down today.
All right, so in 2007, you started coaching the University of Houston's, I can talk well, women's team, presumably while you were studying for your degree in health and psychology from the University of Houston. What led you to be a coach? Did you always want to be a coach?
I did. I'd always told my parents, well into my junior high and high school that I was going to be a professional athlete and I was going to coach after. So that was never a question as to what did life have in store for me after I was done playing. I knew what I wanted to get into. Didn't know quite at what level and what it would be. But I knew, after New York, I moved back to Houston and was in need of a job, and it just so happened the assistant coach of the University Women's Program was available and said, all right, let's give it a go. And so I took the job. I know
MLS, or maybe it's the union, sometimes sets up coaching courses for players while they're active. Did you take advantage of that and work on your licenses while you were still a player, or did you wait till you were finished?
No, they didn't really. If they were doing that, it wasn't really shown to us or educated. We weren't educated on any of that if it was available to us. So I didn't do my licenses until after I was done playing.
Yeah, I remember specifically Chad Deering doing some and taking some courses while he was still a player here. So maybe that was a program that developed a little later.
Or he took it upon himself to seek it out, and that's probably what I should have done. I just didn't,
Well,
I didn't know when I was leaving. So I didn't look into it.
All right, how'd you get involved with the Houston Texans then from U of H?
So I grew up playing for the Texans. It was a club. I didn't grow. Well, let me say that again. I came over to the Texans when I was 16, and we won a national championship back when it was the Snickers US. Well, I can't remember the acronym.
I don't either. Yeah.
But anyway, we won a national championship at U16, and that's when I was sort of being called into all that being called to the national team. That was 1994. So I grew up sort of playing for the Texans, and it's funny how it came full circle. At some point, the academy was established, and a buddy of mine who was running the Texans, a vacancy came in the academy and called me and asked me if I'd be willing to coach at the highest level of youth, and that's where I wanted to go next. So I took it.
Now you've had some experience coaching as an assistant for some of the U.S. youth national teams too. How did that experience sort of affect you as a coach?
Well, it affected me in a great way. I mean, you're talking about working with great coaches and under a great structure like U.S. Soccer, and working with the best players. So it was an honor to be chosen to assist Dave Vandenberg. Dave, certain people in your life allow you to connect to different levels of your career, and Dave was able to see something in me and took a chance on me coming on his staff, and I'm still today very grateful to Dave because it was a great education being a part of those age groups.
Do you have a coaching mentor? Who's the biggest influence on you as a coach?
I think if you just told me pick the first person that comes to mind as a coach, that Roy Reese, who I played for growing up at the Texans, was one that was really impactful in my development. And he's very honest with me and transparent and hard because he saw something in me and knew how to motivate me and press my buttons to push me to the next level. So I don't think without Roy, I don't think I'm here today. I think maybe I haven't played basketball. I don't know. But Roy was able to really get through to me and change a lot of my training habits, my effectiveness and efficiency into the game. So but I played for some great ones. I mean, Bob Gansler, Bob Bradley. I mean, that's when you're a vagabond of the league, you get to play for a lot of coaches.
Yeah. Journeyman. Yeah. Now, at some point, you developed a relationship with FC Dallas, either Lucci or Chris Hayden, perhaps. That obviously is the relationship that led to Chris Richards and Chris Kappas coming here. What was the genesis for that relationship? How did that informal familiarity with FC Dallas come about while you were coaching Texans?
Well, so when I came to the Texans in the academy, I got to see firsthand, learn the landscape of the DA, and FC Dallas was in our conference, and every time we would play them, I mean, you could just the talent was evident, but just their style of play, their culture in which they showed up to the field with, and they were another level that I wasn't used to seeing, and between any of the conference opponents, I really believed in what they were doing and how they were doing it. And so I knew Lucci from the name, from playing in the league. I didn't know Chris, but as years go on, you coach against guys and you see sort of things evolve. I always had a fondness for what they did and believed in it. So I was trying to, in my own way, how do I bring sort of what they do to Houston, and try in my own little way be sort of emulate what they were trying to build here.
Now, there's a story that's been told famously that FC Dallas cut Chris Richards, or did not take him after a trial. Famously, specifically, Lucci did not choose to keep him, and you did. And I believe I'd read that you just took him almost sight unseen. But what did you see in Chris when he joined your club that made him stand out to you at that really young age?
Well, he came in as a gang, so I had him come on like a 2-day trial with our U19 team, and he came in the door as an indoor facility. He came, wobbly kneed, and you could see this like big head on small shoulders, and just you could see the body wasn't developed yet. And so as he's walking up, I had my reservations as to how this was going to go, and then so we broke out into like a 7v7 game, and you see him move, and you see him sort of feel the game out, and you're like, okay. And then he goes up for an aerial duel, and he's 6 inches above the guy he's going up with, and you're like, okay, the kid can jump. And then what he did to me, what really stood out was he had really unbelievable disguise of his passing. He could, and that's a high level attribute from a center back, is that guy that can hide what he's doing and fire through lines efficiently and accurately. And he had it, and that's when I went up to him. I said, "Did you play basketball?" Because most basketball players have that ability, because it's a similar characteristic. You have to get open shooters a look. You got to hide when you're passing to them, so when that guy can't close them out quick enough, right? So
yeah.
He said, "Yeah, I'm a point guard. I was a point guard back in Alabama." And I said, "Well, it shows," and that's where I really saw like this kid's got something from the back. You saw the athleticism, you saw his vertical late leap. He read the game really well. He knew when to drop off, knew when to step to people on their back. So he had a good foundation of tactics to him. And so I just like, man, the only thing this guy's lacking is just develop. He just hasn't developed.
Grow into his body.
Grow into his body.
So you mean sort of like he doesn't have a big wind up. He's not telegraphing his pass. It's like a quick little ping, and then the ball's going 50 yards.
Yeah, his instep pass was perfect, but he did have a long wind up when you put him on a big field. His 40-yard to 50-yard ball, he did have a long wind up, which he and I worked on. Because I told him, just like a jump shooter, if I'm 5'10" and a 6'4" guard's guarding me, I got to have a quick release. If I'm having this big long ball's going to be sent back the other way, and so in order for forwards not to be nicking his long balls away and deflecting them, he's got to be able to trap it and release the long ball quicker. So he did have a long release when it came to the long pass.
Well, anyone that listens to our podcast or reads our work knows that I'm a early buyer in on the Chris Kappas bandwagon. I'm a huge fan of that kid, immensely talented. How early was he with your program, and how long did he develop with you guys before he came to FC Dallas?
So I started with Christian at U14 when he was a U14. So I had 4 years with him, and he was, another gangly kid in those years. But you saw the potential, because he had just really tidy feet. He had a great soccer brain on him. He had a relentless mentality of just work rate and endurance. He wanted it. He was a kid that just stayed after practice every day, did extra stuff. When his dad's saying, "Let's go home," they got one of those kids that we don't have, set up like this. It's you come in the evenings and train, and when mom and dad are ready to go home, you go home. So he just had an unbelievable will to be great, and he just needed, again, to grow into his body physically and get those. And so we did some playing. He started in my pre-academy group, and we started to play him up in age group, because he started to look like that was the route he needed to take. And so he did. I think it was good for him to play up in age group for a couple of years.
Yeah, his will and his ability to stamp it on the game and control the game really, to me, stands out watching him play in the Dallas Cup and things like that. He's an exciting player. So the story has also been told before that you decided at some point that it would be better for Richards and Kappas to come to FC Dallas. What was it about FC Dallas that you thought would specifically benefit them that you obviously must have felt you weren't or couldn't provide at Texans?
I started to see a separation, a real big gap between those two players and everybody else. And when you see that, you start to say, these two kids have star power, and what can I realistically offer this kid now? And I felt it would have been really, what am I looking for? It would not have been in their best interest to keep them around another year. I felt like they both, yes, could have played college soccer, but they were both, in my opinion, could skip that level and start tomorrow somewhere. That's truly how I felt about them. And so there was never a question of where do I send them. I said these guys, you send them to the best, and FC Dallas for me was the best. I was most familiar with them as a staff. This is an organization. So it was a very easy phone call to me to make to Lucci, saying, we were at the national championship together. They were playing in the 17s national championship, and we were playing the 19s. And I just told them before, I said, you need to watch these two kids. They need to be yours after this game.
Wow.
So.
Had you mentioned it to Chris and Chris before that?
I don't know if I mentioned it to Chris or if it was after, but I mentioned it to Lucci first. While we were there in California.
Let's talk about North Texas. When did FC Dallas approach you, and what appealed to you about this gig?
So I guess it was December maybe, or January, that Lucci, I guess it was right at the time Lucci got the first team job here. I called him to congratulate him, and he said, "It's funny you called. I was going to talk to you about a job opening. Would you be interested in coming to Dallas and interviewing?" I said, "Sure." So I started talking, and then Chris had reached out to me, so we started that sort of process, and wanted to hear more about it. And so it was for me. They said they wanted to put a candidate list of three names. I guess Dan and Marco and ownership wanted a list of 3 names that they felt comfortable with, and so I was one of those 3, which I was honored to be. Came in, interviewed, and I knew after walking in and after the 2 hours spending here, I knew that this is where I wanted to be. I was hopeful that I would get it. Didn't know if I would. So prayed about it, and God answered my prayers, and I think this is the right time for me. I was ready for the next step in my career. And I've always felt comfortable with Chris and Lucci, so I knew what I was getting from colleagues, and so I felt comfortable there. But when you're in these walls and you start to see the infrastructure, how it goes on here, and the people you meet, it becomes very clear why they are what they are. So I wanted to be a part of it.
Was it always your goal to be a professional coach? Not a youth coach at some point?
Yeah, that was the ultimate goal. I think when you give yourself goals as players and as anybody in life, you're trying to strive for something more. You never know if you're going to get there, but that's what gets you out of bed is not having something, eye on the prize. And then again, I think we go through these moments of am I meant to go to the next level, or is this where I'm most happy? I think some guys are really most happy being a youth coach and coaching a certain age group that they feel comfortable with. So I think we're all different in where we feel our niche is, but I always felt like professional soccer coaching is where I wanted to go and where I felt I could really offer, my expertise and my personality and my knowledge of the game.
So we're less than a week to your opening game, and you have, I think, 10 players signed to your roster. We've talked a lot on our podcast and our articles about there's going to be a mix of players coming down from MLS and academy kids coming up. Are you at where you're going to be in terms of signings, or should we expect some signings this week leading up to your opening game from some of the trialists you still have around?
There may be some signings. I mean, we're not. It's not a done deal where we are right now at the moment. So it's something we're discussing. We've got a large pool of players that obviously we got guys that have been with us the whole preseason and academy players. So there's a wide array of talent that we're choosing from to fill this roster out. So, but you can maybe expect some other signings.
Will there be any mix of sort of short-term signings? Would you ever be like, hey, I'm going to use you for like a couple of games, or maybe or is it all like in for penny, in for pound?
No, there's a purpose to anybody we sign. There's value. I mean, there's a reason. We're not going to sign guys for a couple weeks of a season. We want there to be a plan for these guys that we sign, and them to feel comfortable in their place with the club and know that they're not worrying about their job week to week. They've been picked for a reason.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about players coming down from MLS and that kind of thing. Just in general terms, how many players do you expect to see come down on any given week? Are we talking about one or two? Should we expect like anyone not in the 18 is going to be down playing with you? How aggressive is that process going to be?
To be honest, but there's so many variables to it. I mean, with all you got international call-ups, you got youth national, U20 World Cup. So the variables at play are really heavy, and so it could be one or two. It could be 4 or 5 week to week. So we'll have to we have the targeted dates and where these can come to play. So we're working together, Luciano, myself, and Chris, and Marco, and everybody, and Andre, and our
you
staff.
Can fill from the academy as well.
And we can fill from the academy as well. So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I guess if you're looking, the fact that it could be different every week is maybe to some people it'd be offsetting, but for me, I look at it as a benefit and we've had all these faces in our training environment at some point, and everybody's comfortable with each other.
So you're going to be constructing an 18-man squad every week out of lots of variables and lots of different pieces in a lot of ways. Okay, so you've had a number of trialists come through, a lot of them local kids. Who is the most out of nowhere, I can't believe we found this guy, he's going to be an asset of the guys that you signed or might be going to sign? Anybody that really just was like out of nowhere surprising?
I'd say they all, all of the ones that are still here have in their own way surprised me. So I wouldn't say one sticks out among anybody else. I just say all of them that are still here have brought something incredible to what our environment is and what the culture that's been created in FC Dallas walls. They've, most of them been a part of the organization, whether it be in the academy at some point, but they've brought a hunger and they've brought a real humbleness to their work, and they're selfless. And so these guys have grinded for 2 months, and they're just they're amazing people, and you can see that they want to be a part of it. And when you see those kind of things, when you see kids train that hard and they're that selfless, you become fans of them. And I've just become a fan of every one of these trialists. I think they're great.
Is this kind of trial and scouting process going to be continuing like during this season? Is it going to be an ongoing process for you guys?
Well, we're honest with them, and they know that where they are. So if some of these guys were to get if an agent or if somebody was to reach out and say we'd like to take a look at you on trial somewhere else, if we haven't told them what their plan is for us, we don't want to stand in their way, kind of deal. So they're training and being sharp with us. There may be a situation where we sign one of them, because of whatever need that becomes available. If the guy gets hurt, there's, again, going back to the variables, and so. They're sharp, but again, they're sharp if somebody else comes calling them too, versus them going away because we didn't have anything to offer them at that moment. So I think they understand, my shot can come anytime, and everybody's pathway is different, everybody's timing is different. So I think they're hopeful.
Some of them will be kept around maybe as long-term practice players.
They'll be kept around. We love them to stay around, until they don't want to be around.
Yeah.
So.
I get excited by watching some of these 15, 16-year-old kids sign and come in, your Pepis and your David Rodriguez's and stuff. Is it get you fired up working with kids like that?
It does. It really. Brings you into this youthful phase of your life where they play strictly for the fun of the game, and it comes out in every training session. Their talent is off the charts. It comes at you each day in some different form where you think you can't be wowed anymore, and you are. So those moments are obviously, as a coach, are incredible, and that's what we love to see. That's why we're out there, is we want these kids to take chances and to step out and improve each day, whether it's in a decision making, whether it's in their leadership skills, whatever it is. We want to see growth in these players, and with Pepe and David, you're seeing incredible growth from day to day, week to week with these guys over the last 2 months. And I think, if anybody's in form right now, you see Pepe. After the last few games, he's in great form, and I think he's so anxious for this season to start. He's just dying to get on the field.
Me too. I've been really impressed with Alfousseni Jata. I think I said that right. How in the world did you guys find that guy?
Again, Lucci was involved in this process, Lucci and Chris, before I got here, so he was one that was targeted and brought here through their scouting and network of people. So it was a pleasant surprise for me that he was there. I mean, I love the guy to death. I think he's a star. He's got star power.
Yeah.
And he's a relentless worker. He's a humble kid, so I think he's got a really high ceiling.
You've got Michel Garbini, who, now that he's a coach, they've given him a last name. He didn't have one when he was a player. And Alex Aldo's on your staff. Can you just talk to me a little bit about how your staff is set up, what roles those guys fill for you?
Yeah, so Michel is my full-time assistant, and he's got an incredible playing background, and you can see, he's going to be a great coach. He cares immensely for the organization and for the players that play here. You can tell he loves it. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He's helped me tremendously. And like I said, I told those guys, it's about their growth as well. So I want them to have a lot of autonomy in sessions and creating sessions, and then stepping into sessions and stopping them, and feeling like if they see something out of place, that they know that they have the freedom to step out and to make those changes and be a coach. Because it is their growth as well. I want guys, I want to be challenged. I want guys, when we get in the office together, that challenge me with ideas and that bring fresh ideas to the forefront, because I want to grow as well. So it's a good collaboration between, we have Artie, who's our sports performance coach, and we have Alex, who's obviously the 15's head coach and assistant with me. So he's giving his life to both these teams, and he's here from morning till night, so he's working tirelessly, and I really appreciate. Alex brings something really dynamic to the staff as well, from his time as an assistant with SMU and being at Florida Gulf Coast. He's an excellent assistant and somebody that will be a great head coach, and he's obviously head coaching our 15s, but I think he's one that's going to grow into something as years go. But I feel our staff gets along really, really well. I couldn't ask for better people, better human beings to be working with. So far, from the scrimmages I've watched, you guys are using the 4-3-3, very similar from the first team. How much of that is a organizational downflow? Because I even see it in the academy too. Different versions, but basically kind of the same. Is that a style you wanted to play anyway, or is that part of that, like a cohesiveness of the first team to second team? No, it's part of the we want everybody to with the professional team of the Apex, you want everybody to play that way, so the profiles are being built accordingly. I'm comfortable. That's how I was playing back where I came from. So, but it's meant to, in this organization, to make sure every player is understanding of the tactics and the formation in which we play. So with the movement that happens between academy, second team to first team, first team back to second team, that there's a real comfortableness, understanding of how we play. Yeah, I would think if you're going to have that kind of integration, you would need an understanding of a similar sort of concept. Have you seen the North Texas kits yet? Do you know what they look like? You have not? I have not even seen them. I've been asking, can we wear them for this friendly game? Can we break them out? It's been 2 months. I'm tired of seeing the training gear on the weekend. So yeah. I'm ready to see the kits. Me too. We're big into kits, so I hope it's good. We even did a thing where we made up I had 4 different people come up with designs, and we all came up with the same design, which was the play off of the sash look, like a River Plate style sash look, and everyone had the same concept. So we're all crossing our fingers, because that's a pretty good concept. Kits are fun. I don't know how much players care about kits, but I think it's important. It doesn't stop from when you're playing U5 and you get your first uniform. It doesn't stop till your career's over. That's one of the best parts, is what's the new uniform look like. So yeah, that doesn't matter how old you are, you still love that day. So how exactly does it work with academy kids coming up to play with you? I know there's not a contract, but there must be something that they have to do or sign or to say that I'm an amateur, I'm playing, so I'm not losing my college eligibility. Amateur contracts is that what we call it, amateur contract? It's sort of a statement that I'm playing for free, essentially. Are there anybody with the academy that we should expect to see? Do you want to name some names of some guys that we might see come up a little bit, or is that presumptuous? Well, we've had a good. I'd say I can't the number off the top of my head, but I'd say 10 to 12 players that have been in our youth. Not many. Our second team environment, even a couple of U17 academy players. So it wouldn't be far fetched to have a few of those kids at some point in the season.
I'll have a list if you like. If you want to take my list.
We don't have them set yet, but there's the names that I'm sure that and
Yeah.
It's a wealth of talent. So
I've been referring to North Texas as, in effect, a U23 team. Is that a fair sort of take, a developmental squad kind of take, or is that too narrow-minded?
I mean, it's fair. Will there be a guy that maybe over 23? Yes. I mean, from time to time, will there be a guy? I mean, will there be a lot of 16-year-olds, 17, 18? Yes.
Yeah.
So you could almost go younger and say, I mean, if you're only like one or two guys over the age of 23, the majority is going to be
Even younger.
So
is that a problem? Not a problem. Is that something you have to take into account? I mean, when you're playing this league you're playing in, most of the other teams are not going to be like that. Most of the other teams are going to have guys that are in what you would call the prime window of their career. So that obviously is a consideration, I would think, in terms of tactics and management and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's the purpose of what we're doing is we want these kids to be playing with men, and so they need to grow up fast, and they will grow up fast when that first tackle comes through, and when that first aerial duel goes, elbow goes in their ear, and they're going to have to grow up really fast because those are the psychological pieces in which you can't, when you're playing in your own age group and you're having so much success, how much are you grasping? And so I think that you really grasp a lot when you're playing. You can't do the things, your go-to moves or your go-to situations that you've solved problems with. You're going to have to come up with multiple solutions for these kids in the game. And that's where their true growth is going to come from.
I mean, in a way, you're going to have to teach a lot of these kids how to be professionals, right? I mean, even the kids that are a little bit older have not been professionals. I mean, that's got to be as much of a job for you as it is just training them, I would think.
That's the job of us as a staff, is for us to pay really close attention to detail and know the psyche of our players. And if you're great coaches, you understand, what David's personality is, and if he's feeling like he's not right, you can pull him aside. Hey, you're okay? What's going on? Kind of deal. And you show him video. You work with him after practice. Everybody's going to have a different individual plan as to what they need to get to the next level. So it's that constant conversation and constant being around them and managing them when they're through the ups and downs, because there's going to be a lot of downs. No kidding. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of growth that happens, and growth happens in a lot of failures. So it's going to be our job to pick them up and hug them and let them know, this is, it's okay. This is what it's about. You're going to grow.
Well, in there you answered a question I had about David Rodriguez. I had been calling him David. I was wondering whether it was David or David. So you said David, so I'm assuming it's David.
I think I've probably said both David and David. But
I called him David today, and he didn't say anything.
Yeah, I think within the walls now, I'm learning every poppies and brotes and stuff.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. Musa is the other one for Cisse. Muha. Yeah. Instead of Muhammad. Do you have an expectation for the season and performance-wise? What are you going to make a title run here? What should we expect?
I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal we tell each other every day. The goal is to win a championship. I mean, that's the ultimate team reflection, and that's the ultimate team. You want your team to be striving for something. Now, individually, we're striving for something different. We're all striving for different growth and where we, what our needs are, where we need to go. So, it's development is the number one key of the season, but with development comes learning how to win, and we want these kids to learn how to win and not lay down to anybody. And our culture is we want to impose our will on people. We don't ever fear anybody, and that will never be the case. Doesn't matter what the age of our players are versus the age of theirs. We walk on the field to win a game. Learning
how to play without fear probably is one of the hardest things for young players to do. It certainly was my big failing. Not that I was even remotely good at all, but that's always something I always try and stress with young players too. Learning to play without fear.
Yeah, we tell them all the time. Self-doubt can be it can eat you up, and so those players that have too much self-doubt really find themselves going in a downward spiral. And so we have to be honest and transparent with them and what they need to overcome, because you can help them along the way. You can tell them, hey, you're doing things this way, and this is great, but you have to be you got to be hard on them as well. And they're going to have to realize that to grow up, they have to get thick skin. They're going to play for coaches they're going to scream and yell at them. They're going to play for there's different different people need different things, but self-doubt is and insecurity, and we want, for me, I want guys that are not afraid to make mistakes. You know, I tell them all the time, I'm not going to yell at you for mistakes. I'm going to yell at you for the reaction to your mistake if it's not the right reaction. But take chances, take risk, think outside the box, creativity, all those things, do them in the right areas. But the game presents itself with so many different solutions. There's no one right solution. There's a lot of them. So we want them to understand, like, don't be fearful.
All right, your big season opener is this weekend. North Texas SC kicks off on Saturday, March 30th at 6 p.m. against the Chattanooga Red Wolves. They have 2 local players, by the way, Connor Doyle and Jose Soto. Doyle's a big striker out of the Dallas Texans, a club we're all familiar with around here. He went to McKinney Boyd and Creighton, and then played for people like Derby County, DC United, and a couple other teams like that. But he's a 28-year-old big body, a guy you'll have to mark up tightly, I imagine, a handful for your guys. And then Jose Soto, another local from Fort Worth, came out of the Houston Dynamo Academy of all things, played at Campbell and SMU. So there's just 2 local guys that you can look for as they play North Texas. So Eric, FC Dallas is out of town. You got all the spotlight to yourself. What can fans expect to see in the stadium on Saturday from your team?
You can expect to see extremely high attacking minded soccer. We want to go at them. We have some really special players going forward. So you can expect to see a lot of great combination play, a lot of great 1v1 duels in which kids have the freedom to go at people. Creativity, I think you're going to see a lot of kids on display that are playing freely. And then you're going to see from a team, you're going to see a team that's hungry. We want to come out on our front foot and impose our will. So I think you're going to, for the fans to see 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, the future of the organization or beyond is going to be really, if you love the young kids that have the projections of star power, you're going to love to see this group.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Appreciate it. All right, thanks to all the listeners for checking out this special Third Degree the Podcast edition with North Texas SC head coach Eric Quill. Our normal FC Dallas podcast will be out later this week. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure and subscribe at your local podcast provider. And for more FC Dallas and North Texas SC content, you can read our work at thirddegree.net, Dallas Morning News, or follow us on Twitter at thirddegree.net and Instagram at thirddegree.net. Sensing a trend there on those names. So long, and thanks for joining us on Third Degree, the podcast.